The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the vast parking lot of Sterling Industries. Antonio Rivera glanced at his watch for the third time, 8:42 a.m. Only 18 minutes left before his shift officially started. If he was late again even by a minute, he would lose this job, the job that kept the lights on in his small apartment and put food on the table for his 7-year-old daughter, Mia. He broke into a jog, his work boots slapping against the concrete. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain from the night before. His breath came in short bursts, fogging slightly in the cold. Just get to the time clock, he told himself. Just punch in on time. For Mia. And then he heard it, a sharp metallic crash behind him, followed by a gasp of pain. Antonio skidded to a stop and spun around. About 30 feet away, a woman had fallen hard on the damp asphalt. Her metal crutch lay several feet from her outstretched hand. A small black purse had spilled its contents across the ground keys, a phone, a few crumpled papers. She was trying to push herself up, but her arms trembled violently, and she collapsed back down with a muffled cry. Around her, workers streamed past, men in hard hats, women carrying coffee cups. A few glanced in her direction, but no one stopped. One man even stepped over her fallen crutch without breaking stride. Antonio's heart slammed against his ribs. His watch ticked in his mind like a countdown. 16 minutes left. The woman lifted her head. Her face was pale, twisted in pain. Her long, dark hair was disheveled, and her eyes, wide, desperate, and filled with quiet humiliation, met his for a split second. Something inside Antonio broke. He ran. "Hey, are you okay?" he called, dropping to one knee beside her. Up close, he could see she was younger than he first thought, mid-20s perhaps. She wore a simple navy blouse and black slacks, but her left leg was clearly injured. She clutched it with both hands, breathing through gritted teeth. I can't stand," she whispered, her voice strained. "My ankle." It gave out. Antonio didn't hesitate. He picked up her crutch and gently helped her sit upright. She was lighter than he expected, but her body shook with every movement. "Let me help you inside," he said, sliding an arm around her shoulders. "There's a medical station on the first floor." She looked up at him, surprise flickering across her pain-filled face. "You'll be late for work." Antonio glanced at his watch. 15 minutes. He swallowed hard. "Some things are more important," he said quietly. He supported most of her weight as they made their way slowly toward the main entrance. She leaned heavily on him, each step clearly agony. Workers continued to pass them, some casting curious glances, but no one offered help. Antonio felt a familiar burn of anger in his chest, the same anger he felt every time he saw someone look away from a person in need. Inside the building, he guided her straight to the small medical room. The nurse on duty, a kind-faced woman named Carla, immediately took over, helping the woman onto the examination table and checking her ankle. "Thank you," the woman said softly as Antonio stepped back. Her voice was cultured, almost refined, which seemed at odds with her simple clothes and the way she had been left alone in the parking lot. Antonio nodded. "You're going to be okay. I'll check on you later if I can." He turned and ran. By the time he reached the time clock, his lungs were burning. He slammed his badge against the scanner. The machine beeped once. Then the screen flashed red late 40 minutes. Antonio stared at the words, his stomach dropping like a stone. Before he could even process it, the door to the supervisor's office swung open. Ramon Vargas stepped out, arms crossed his face, set in the same cold expression Antonio had come to dread. "Rivera. My office. Now." Inside the small, cluttered room, Ramon didn't waste time. "You're fired." The words landed like a punch. Antonio's voice cracked. "Sir, I can explain." "There was a woman in the parking lot. She fell. She couldn't walk. I had to help her." Ramon held up a hand, cutting him off. "I don't care if you were saving the president. Rules are rules. 40 minutes late. That's your third strike this month." Antonio felt the room spin. "This is my only job," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have a daughter. She's 7. I can't. You should have thought of that before you decided to play hero." Ramon said, sliding a termination form across the desk. "Sign it and clear out your locker." Antonio stood frozen, the pen shaking in his hand. All he could think about was Mia waiting at school, her small backpack slung over one shoulder, expecting her father to pick her up on time. He signed. As he walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with his few personal items, one of the older workers muttered under his breath as he passed, "You know who that woman was, right?" Antonio stopped. The man lowered his voice. "She's not just any employee. She's the one who really runs things around here." Antonio felt ice slide down his spine. If that was true, then the woman he had stopped to help wasn't just a stranger. She was someone who could either save him or destroy what little he had left. Antonio walked out of Sterling Industries with a cardboard box under one arm and the termination paper crumpled in his fist. The afternoon sun felt too bright, the parking lot too empty. Every step echoed louder than the last. He had been fired, not for stealing, not for fighting, not for anything he had actually done wrong. He had been fired because he stopped to help a woman who couldn't stand up. He sat in his old pickup truck for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. A message from the school. "Mr. Rivera, Mia's lunch account is overdue again. She didn't eat today." Antonio closed his eyes. The knot in his chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. When he finally pulled up outside the small apartment building, Mia was already waiting on the front steps with her teacher, Mrs. Lopez. The little girl's face lit up the moment she saw his truck. "Daddy," she ran to him, backpack bouncing. "You're home early." Antonio forced a smile and lifted her into his arms. She was getting heavier every month, but he still did it every single day. "Yeah, baby. Daddy's home early." Mrs. Lopez gave him a sympathetic look. "Everything okay, Antonio?" "Everything's fine," he lied. "Just some schedule changes at work." He carried Mia upstairs to their tiny two-bedroom apartment. The moment the door closed, the smile fell from his face. He set Mia down and went straight to the kitchen, opening the fridge, even though he already knew what was inside: half a carton of milk, 2 eggs, and a small container of leftover rice. Mia climbed onto a chair at the table and pulled out her homework. "Daddy, Ken, we have chicken nuggets tonight?" The smiley face one's Antonio's throat closed. "Not tonight, sweetheart." "How about spaghetti again?" Mia tilted her head, studying him the way only 7-year-olds can. "Are you sad?" He turned away so she wouldn't see his face. "No, baby. Daddy's just tired." But Mia wasn't fooled. She walked over and wrapped her small arms around his waist from behind. "It's okay if you're sad. I get sad sometimes too. But we have each other, right?" Antonio felt his eyes burn. He turned and knelt so they were eye level. "Always, Mia. We always have each other." That night, after Mia had fallen asleep with her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, Antonio sat at the kitchen table under the dim light. The termination paper lay in front of him like a death sentence. Rent was due in 12 days. Mia's school lunch account was already negative. The electricity bill had a red final notice stamp. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello." A woman's voice, calm and clear, came through the line. "Mr. Rivera, this is Rosa Beltran, the woman from the parking lot this morning." Antonio's grip tightened on the phone. I wanted to thank you properly," she continued, "and to apologize. I heard what happened. You lost your job because of me." Antonio let out a bitter laugh. "It wasn't because of you, it was because of my supervisor." There was a short pause. Still, Rosa said softly, "I'd like to meet you, just for a few minutes. There's a small cafe across from the park on Maple Street. Tomorrow morning at 10, please." Antonio glanced toward Mia's bedroom door. "I don't think that's a good idea." "I understand if you're angry," Rosa said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "But I need to speak with you. 10 minutes. That's all I ask." He was silent for a long moment. 10 minutes, he finally said. "And then I never hear from you again." 10 minutes, she agreed. The next morning, Antonio dropped Mia at school and walked to the cafe. He arrived early wearing the same work shirt from yesterday because he no longer had a reason to change out of it. Rosa was already there, sitting by the window. No crutches today, but she still moved carefully as she stood to greet him. She looked different in daylight, poised, elegant, but There was a shadow of exhaustion under her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said. They sat. She ordered coffee for both of them without asking what he wanted. Antonio didn't touch his. "I know you lost your job," Rosa began. "I also know your supervisor, Ramon Vargas, has been calling other companies to blacklist you." Antonio's jaw tightened. "How do you know that?" "Because I asked." She slid a small envelope across the table. "Inside is enough money to cover your rent for 3 months and Mia's school meals for the rest of the year." Antonio stared at the envelope like it might burn him. "I don't want your money, I know," Rosa said gently. "But I need to do this. Not because I feel guilty, because what happened to you was wrong, and I have the power to make it right." Antonio finally looked up at her. "Who are you?" Rosa took a slow breath. "My name is Rosa Beltran. I am the owner and president of Sterling Industries." The words landed like a hammer. Antonio felt the floor tilt beneath him. "You're the owner?" Rosa nodded once. "I don't usually walk through the employee parking lot. But yesterday I needed air. I needed to remember what the company actually looks like from the ground level, and then I fell. And everyone walked past me. Except you." She leaned forward slightly. "I've been investigating Ramon for months. He's been firing people, unfairly covering it up, and using fear to keep everyone silent. You are the first person who has given me real living proof of how he operates." Antonio's hands were shaking. "So what do you want from me?" Rosa's eyes met his steady and determined. "I want you to help me bring him down. I need your statement. I need you to tell the truth about what happened yesterday. And I promise you this, if you do, I will make sure you never lose another job because you chose to be kind." Antonio looked out the window toward the park where children were playing. He thought about Mia's small voice last night, "Bajunglo, kon anit kung juoch." He thought about the termination paper still sitting on his kitchen table. And then he looked back at Rosa. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "But not for the money, and not for revenge. I'll do it because no one should ever be punished for helping someone who's hurt." Rosa's eyes softened. "Thank you, Antonio." As they stood to leave, Rosa paused at the door. "One more thing," she said. "Ramon already knows I'm investigating him. He will try to destroy you before I can protect you." "Are you ready for that?" Antonio thought of his daughter's face. He gave the only answer he could. "I have to be. To be continued." That night, Antonio sat on the edge of Mia's bed long after she had fallen asleep. The small nightlight cast a soft pink glow across her face. Her stuffed rabbit was tucked under one arm, and her breathing was slow and steady. He watched her for a long time, memorizing every detail. The way her dark hair curled against the pillow, the tiny scar on her forehead from when she was 4 and had fallen off the playground slide. His phone lay on the nightstand, the screen still showing the last message from the landlord: rent due in 11 days. No more extensions. Antonio rubbed his face with both hands. He had no savings, no backup plan. Just a 7-year-old girl who still believed her father could fix anything. The next morning, he walked Mia to school, holding her hand tighter than usual. She looked up at him with those bright, trusting eyes. "Ba, are you okay?" "You look tired." "I'm fine, baby," he said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about grown-up stuff." Mia squeezed his hand. "If you're worried about money, I can stop buying milk at school. Water is free." Antonio felt something crack inside his chest. He knelt down in front of the school gate and pulled her into a tight hug. "You don't have to do that," he whispered. "Daddy's going to figure this out." He watched her run inside her backpack, bouncing, and felt the full weight of his decision settle on his shoulders. At 10 o'clock, he met Rosa at the small cafe across from the park, just as she had asked. She was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees waiting. No luxury handbag today. Just a simple coat and the same determined look in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said as he sat down. Antonio didn't touch the coffee. "You said 10 minutes," Rosa nodded. "I'll be quick. I am the owner of Sterling Industries. I've been investigating Ramon Vargas for months. He's been firing good people for no reason, covering his tracks and creating a culture of fear. You are the first person who has given me living proof of how he really operates." Antonio stared at her. "And what do you want from me?" "I need your official statement," Rosa said. "And I need you to help me gather more evidence, the security camera footage from that morning and the full list of people he has fired in the last 6 months without proper cause." Antonio let out a short, bitter laugh. "You want me to go back to the company that just fired me?" "I know it's dangerous," Rosa admitted. "Ramon will fight back, but if we do this right, we can stop him from destroying more lives." Antonio looked out the window toward the park where children were playing. He thought about Mia's words last night. "I have a daughter," he said quietly. "She's all I have left. If I do this and Ramon comes after me..." "What happens to her?" Rosa leaned forward, her voice steady but soft. "I will protect her. I will protect both of you. You have my word." Antonio studied her face for a long moment. Then he stood up. "I need time to think." He walked out without drinking the coffee. For the next 3 days, Antonio barely slept. Every time his phone rang with an unknown number, his heart jumped. He applied to 6 different jobs and received the same polite rejection each time. One manager even admitted it over the phone. "Ramon Vargas called us. Said you were trouble." "I'm sorry, man." On the 4th day, the landlord knocked on his door. "Antonio Warren, I like you. But business is business. If you don't have the rent by Friday, I have to start the eviction process." That same afternoon, while Antonio was picking Mia up from school, his phone rang again. It was Ramon. "I hear you've been talking to the big boss," Ramon said, his voice smooth and mocking. "Bad move, Rivera. Real bad move." Antonio stepped away from Mia so she wouldn't hear. "What do you want?" "I want you to keep your mouth shut," Ramon replied. "You say one word about that parking lot incident, and I'll make sure no company in this city ever hires you again. You think losing one job was bad? Try explaining to your little girl why you can't even get a job washing dishes." Antonio's hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles turned white. Ramon laughed softly. "Think about it. You're a single dad. You can't afford to play hero." The call ended. That night, Mia noticed her father staring at the wall. "Bah, are we going to have to move again?" Antonio pulled her onto his lap and held her close. "I don't know, baby." Mia rested her head against his chest. "If we have to move, it's okay. As long as we're together." Antonio closed his eyes, fighting back tears. The next morning, Rosa called again. "Antonio, I need your answer. The investigation is starting. I can protect you, but only if you stand with me." Antonio looked at Mia, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table, humming a song from school. He thought about the man he wanted his daughter to grow up seeing. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "I'll give my statement." Rosa's voice softened with relief. "Thank you. Meet me at the company tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll go in together." The following afternoon, Antonio and Rosa walked into Sterling Industries side by side. Security guards stared. Whispers followed them down the hallway. They reached the security office. Rosa spoke with calm authority. "I need the camera footage from the employee parking lot on the morning of the 12th. The guard looked nervous. "Ma'am, the files were deleted this morning. Standard procedure after 48 hours. Rosa's face went pale. Antonio felt his stomach drop. Ramon's voice suddenly cut through the room from behind them. "Looking for something." He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling like a man who had already won. Rosa turned slowly. "You deleted the footage," Ramon shrugged. "Company policy. Nothing personal." He looked at Antonio, his smile turning sharp. Still playing Hero Rivera. How's that working out for your rent? Antonio stepped forward, anger rising. Ramon laughed. You think you're safe because she's standing next to you. Let me ask you both something. He leaned in, voice low and venomous. You want to play Justice Rosa fine. But tell me this. Why were you really in that parking lot alone that morning? What were you running from? Rosa froze. Antonio looked between them, confusion turning to dread. Ramon's eyes gleamed with triumph. Because if the camera is gone, maybe the real story is something you don't want anyone to see. To be continued? Ramon's words hung in the air like smoke, thick and poisonous. Antonio turned to Rosa, his pulse hammering. What is he talking about? Rosa's face had gone pale, but her eyes remained steady. She took one slow step forward, her crutch tapping softly against the floor. You want the truth, Ramon? She said quietly. Fine. I'll give it to you. She looked at Antonio, her voice softening just enough for him to hear the weight behind every word. I wasn't in that parking lot by accident. I was investigating you, Ramon. For months, I've been gathering proof that you've been firing people, unfairly deleting records, and threatening anyone who speaks up. That morning, I went down there alone because I needed to see the cameras with my own eyes. I needed to know if the system I built was being used to destroy lives. Ramon laughed, but it sounded forced. You expect anyone to believe that I don't expect them to believe me, Rosa said. I expect them to see the evidence. She nodded toward Gabriella, who had been standing silently in the corner. The auditor stepped forward and opened her laptop on the security desk. While you were busy deleting the internal files, Gabriella said calmly, you forgot one thing, the cloud backup, the one that automatically saves every camera feed for legal compliance. She clicked play. The large monitor flickered to life. There it was, clear time-stamped footage from the morning of the 12th, Rosa falling, the crutch flying, workers walking past without stopping. And then Antonio running in, kneeling beside her, helping her up, supporting her all the way into the building. The entire room went silent. Ramon's smirk vanished. Rosa turned to face every person in the security office and the hallway beyond, where more employees had gathered. This man lost his job because he did what none of you did, she said, her voice carrying clearly. He helped someone who was hurt, and Ramon punished him for it. She looked straight at Ramon. You're suspended effective immediately. An independent investigation will begin today. Every termination you've signed in the last 6 months will be reviewed. Ramon's face twisted with rage. You can't do this. I already did, Rosa replied. Security will escort you out. 2 guards moved forward. Ramon shrugged them off and pointed a finger at Antonio. You think this is over, he snarled. You're nothing but a broke single dad playing hero. I'll make sure every company in this city knows exactly who you are. He stormed out the door, slamming behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Then Rosa turned to Antonio. Her hands were trembling slightly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted this to touch you or your daughter. Antonio looked at her exhaustion and something deeper in his eyes. You didn't do this, he said. He did. That evening, Antonio picked Mia up from school. She ran into his arms as usual, but she could feel something was wrong. Bah, you look sad again. He knelt down and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Daddy had a hard day at work, baby, but everything's going to be okay. Mia studied him for a long moment, then hugged him tightly. If you're scared, it's okay. I'm brave for both of us. Antonio held her close, his eyes stinging. Later that night, after Mia had fallen asleep, Antonio sat at the kitchen table staring at the termination letter. His phone buzzed. Rosa, he answered. Antonio, I just received the preliminary report from Gabriella. We have enough to move forward with the full investigation. But Ramon is already fighting back. He's spreading rumors that I'm protecting you because we have some kind of personal relationship." Antonio let out a tired breath. "Of course he is." There was a pause. "I can have security assigned to your building if you want," Rosa said. "I can also cover your rent until this is over." "No," Antonio said firmly. "I don't want your money. I want this to end the right way." Another pause. "Then let me help in another way," Rosa said softly. "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring Mia if you need to. We'll go over everything together. I promise I won't let him hurt your family." Antonio looked toward Mia's bedroom door. "I'll be there," he said. The next morning, Antonio and Mia walked into Sterling Industries together. Mia held her father's hand tightly, her eyes wide as she looked around the tall glass building. "Wow. This is where you work." "Bah, not anymore," Antonio said quietly. They rode the elevator to the top floor. Rosa was waiting for them in a bright open conference room. She smiled when she saw Mia. "Hello, Mia. I'm Rosa. Thank you for coming." Mia looked at her curiously. "You're the lady my daddy helped." Rosa nodded. "I am. And because of your daddy, a lot of people might get help now." They sat down. Gabriela joined them with stacks of documents. For the next 2 hours, they went through everything. Dates, names, patterns of unfair firings. Antonio told his full story while Mia colored quietly at the end of the table, occasionally glancing up to make sure her father was still there. At one point, Rosa looked at Antonio across the table. "You didn't have to come back here," she said. "Most people would have walked away." Antonio met her eyes. "I'm tired of walking away from things that are wrong." Suddenly the door burst open. Ramon stood there, flanked by 2 security guards who clearly didn't want to be there. "You're making a big mistake, Rosa," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "If you push this investigation, certain private information about your own past might find its way into the press." Rosa stood slowly. "Try it," she said. "I'm done hiding." Ramon's gaze shifted to Mia, who had stopped coloring and was watching everything with wide eyes. "Nice kid," he said coldly. It would be a shame if her father lost everything because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Antonio rose, instantly stepping between Ramon and his daughter. "Leave my family out of this," Ramon smiled thinly. "Too late. The board meets in 2 hours. By tonight, both of you will be gone." He turned and walked out. The room fell silent. Mia tugged on Antonio's sleeve, her voice small. "Bah. Is the bad man going to hurt us?" Antonio knelt down and cupped her face gently. "No, baby. Daddy won't let that happen." But as he looked up at Rosa, he saw the same fear he felt reflected in her eyes. The fight had only just begun, and this time it wasn't just his job on the line, it was everything. The days that followed Ramon's threat moved like a slow, unstoppable tide. Rosa didn't wait. By the next morning, the independent investigation was officially launched. Auditors, lawyers, and HR specialists from outside the company poured into Sterling Industries. Doors that had been closed for years suddenly opened. Files long buried were pulled into the light. Antonio returned to the company not as a fired employee, but as the first official witness. He sat in a quiet conference room with Gabriela and 2 other investigators recounting everything. The woman on the ground, the workers who walked past Ramon's cold dismissal, and the threatening phone call that followed. Every word was recorded, every detail was cross-checked. Rosa stayed away from those meetings. She wanted the process to be clean untouched by her name. But every evening she called Antonio. "How was it today?" she would ask, her voice soft but steady. "Hard," he admitted one night. "They keep asking me the same questions, like they're waiting for me to change my story." "They're not waiting for you to break," Rosa said. "They're making sure no one else can break you later." On the 3rd day of the investigation, the first wave of truth hit. 3 other employees, 2 men and 1 woman, came forward after seeing Antonio's name on the internal memo. They had been fired quietly in the past 6 months for performance issues. All of them had stories that matched Antonio's small mistakes, sudden terminations, and silent warnings not to speak up. By the end of the week, Ramon was officially suspended and escorted from the building. Antonio watched from the window of the 3rd floor as security walked him to his car. Ramon didn't look up. He didn't need to. The damage had already been done. That same afternoon, Antonio received a new contract. Not his old job. A better one. Facilities supervisor, higher pay, better hours, and a clause that protected him from any retaliation. The letter attached was signed by Rosa Beltran herself, but the decision had come from the board after reviewing the preliminary findings. He read it 3 times before he believed it was real. That evening he picked Mia up from school and took her to their favorite park. They sat on the same bench where he had once stared at the ground, wondering how he would feed her. "But why are you smiling like that?" Mia asked, licking ice cream from her fingers. Antonio pulled her onto his lap. "Because today something good happened." "Something really good." Mia tilted her head. "Did the bad man go away?" "He did," Antonio said. "And because a lot of brave people told the truth, Daddy got his job back. A better one." Mia's eyes widened. "So we don't have to move." "Oh, baby, we're staying right here." Mia threw her arms around his neck so tightly he could barely breathe. "I knew you would fix it," she whispered. "Because you're my hero." Antonio closed his eyes, holding his daughter close as the evening sun warmed their backs. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, Rosa came to their apartment for the first time. She brought nothing expensive, just a small bouquet of wildflowers and a board game for Mia. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her crutch leaning against the wall as she sat on the living room floor helping Mia build a castle out of blocks. Antonio watched them from the kitchen while stirring pasta. For the first time in years, the apartment didn't feel too small. After dinner, while Mia was in the bath, Rosa and Antonio stood on the tiny balcony overlooking the street. "I'm sorry it took so long," Rosa said quietly. "The investigation is still going. More people are coming forward every day. Ramon won't be able to hurt anyone else." Antonio nodded. "Thank you." Rosa turned to him. "No, thank you. If you hadn't stopped that day, I don't know how long I would have stayed blind to what was happening in my own company." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Rosa spoke again, softer this time. "I'd like to keep seeing you. Both of you. Not because I owe you anything, because I want to." Antonio looked at her, this woman who had lost her crutches and found her strength, who had chosen justice over comfort, who had stepped into their messy, ordinary life without hesitation. "I'd like that too," he said. Inside, Mia's laughter floated through the open window as she played with her toys. Months passed. Ramon was formally charged and eventually left the company. The culture at Sterling Industries slowly began to change, fairer policies, open reporting lines, and a new respect for the people who kept the machines running. Antonio kept his new position. He no longer worked double shifts. He had time to help Mia with homework, to read her bedtime stories, and to cook dinner without rushing. And Rosa became a steady, gentle presence in their lives. She never tried to replace what they had lost. She simply added to it. One warm evening in early summer, the 3 of them sat on a blanket in the park, Antonio, Mia, and Rosa watching the sunset paint the sky in soft oranges and pinks. Mia leaned against Rosa's side, half asleep, her small hand resting on Rosa's arm. "Rosa," she murmured. Yes, sweetheart, when the new baby comes. Can I help you take care of her? Rosa's hand gently touched her own belly, still early, but already full of promise. She looked at Antonio, eyes shining. Of course you can, she whispered. We're a family now. Antonio reached over and took Rosa's hand. In that quiet moment under a sky turning dark, he understood something profound. Long taught had not made him rich. It had not made his life easy. But it had made him whole. And sometimes the greatest reward for doing the right thing is not justice or money or even a second chance at love. It is the simple, quiet knowledge that you taught your child and yourself that being good is never a mistake, even when the world tries to punish you for it.